It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them, so thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. My guest today is Jeff Thomas. Jeff was named to Morgan Stanley's Chairman's Club in 2008, recognized within the top 2% of all advisors globally. From 2009 to 13, Barron's magazine recognized him as one of Texas' top financial advisors. After 25 years of working at some of the biggest names on Wall Street, Jeff founded Archetype, a pure fiduciary platform designed to help clients thrive across generations by connecting their money with their purpose. From advisors who are wired for more to high-capacity business owners, Jeff is passionate about fueling leaders for greater impact. Jeff is also author of Trading Up, Moving from Success to Significance on Wall Street. Jeff Thomas, welcome into the corner office.
Thanks so much, Brant. Great to be here.
Oh, wonderful to have you here as well. And it's a cold, windy, and wet day in Connecticut, but something tells me it's probably a little warmer down in Texas. How is it down by you?
Yeah, let's not talk about the weather today. It's perfect here today in Houston, Texas. So not bad. No complaints.
You know, we kind of kick things off, obviously, with kind of the topic of the moment. It's kind of hard to, ignore the 100-pound or the 800-pound elephant in the room. How are you doing through these pandemic times? How are you? How are your family? How's your business?
Well, thanks for asking. Yeah, these are strange times, as we all know. And I just, it's almost every day, isn't it strange, Brant? Don't you think that we're going to look back at this period? You're going to write all these books 10 years from now, right? About this period and see the things maybe we did right and wrong. And I have my opinions and all of that. But the outcomes for families and different businesses, the dispersion is so wide, and frankly, we've been very fortunate. Nobody in my immediate family has had it. We've got my wife and I have two daughters, 28 and 19. And
did they both come home?
Well, the 28-year-old is, married and has her first child who just turned one. So that's all very exciting for us. But everybody's been healthy. And the 19-year-old's off at school. She did come home in March. She's at Northwestern in Chicago. And so she came home with a teammate of hers. She's a field hockey player, and so she came home with a friend of hers from Spain, and they spent a few months with us and finished up. Probably wasn't their ideal freshman year, but we liked having them around.
But what a blessing, though, right? I mean, what a blessing. I had, my daughter's a college athlete as well. She's a rower up at Dartmouth, and she came down right at the beginning of the pandemic. We were meant to go back to California together, and as it happened, she thought she might have been exposed, and we, of course, this is long before tests were available readily. And, we locked down for 3 weeks, and to be honest, I'll look back and I'll remember fondly those 3 weeks together. Now, we had our issues.
Yeah, exactly. All of us parents loved it.
The kids, I'm not so sure.
The kids loved it as much. But,
well, listen, I'm glad to hear that you've been blessed. And, we, of course, want to talk a little bit more about your career and kind of what's led you to Archetype Wealth Advisors. And you've had just a storied career in financial services. In financial wealth advising. I'm really looking forward to it. But we kind of like to start with the early years and, just tell us, Jeff, a little bit about where you grew up and what your early family life was like.
Well, yeah. It's and I think those things are relevant. I think you're smart. I know you interview people for a living, so you're good at kind of getting to the core but I think a lot of people kind of ignore those years. But I think they are formative.
Yeah.
And so I grew up in St. Louis primarily.
Okay. Midwestern boy. Yeah.
Yep, both of my parents were from the same little town in Pennsylvania,
Okay.
Bradford, Pennsylvania, which
Wow.
is really it was really an oil town
Yeah.
back then, and Kendall Oil, and they actually didn't know each other. They had both gone off to
Oh.
college, but were set up on a blind date back in their little hometown
They
after
were both
college.
from the same hometown but didn't know each other.
Isn't that bizarre?
That is very strange.
They were
Yeah.
a few years apart, about 4 years apart.
Yeah.
So
well,
they
that's
probably
enough. Yeah. Different schools and so forth, right?
Exactly. So anyway, they were both believers and that sort of thing. And my dad was he was the youngest of four boys, and his father died really in the oil fields when he was only eight years old, and
goodness.
He was raised by his mother, and she had to go back to school, get a teaching certificate, and put the boys all through, raised them all. And the three older brothers all went into the military because that was sort of your way out of the little town. And my dad was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to the University of Cincinnati to study engineering on a work-study program.
Right,
and so that got him out of Bradford, which is a great town, but it's just tough when the oil kind of dries up.
Absolutely.
Anyway, he ended up going to work for International Harvester, designing the engine for the Scout for all those old guys out there, kind of the first SUV, if you will. And so they were living in Indiana, working at the plant there, and then late in his 20s, my parents' pastor asked my dad, "Have you ever considered going into the ministry?" And now the way I like to tell the story is that he probably asked every 20-something.
Right. He's planting seeds. He's planting seeds.
He finally got a yes. And so I'm sure that anyway. And so my dad said yes. And the rest was kind of history. He ended up working summers for International Harvester and going full time to seminary. And I always kind of admire my mother, and I wonder if, she always just told this story deadpan, like it was no big deal. And I was like, yeah, but you married the engineer, and he had like this, what was then kind of an MBA for engineers from Purdue. And so, I'm sure she thought they were on the kind of corporate fast track. Right. Wow. And then suddenly we're being assigned to a tiny church in Cadiz, Ohio, and a coal mining town.
Wow.
And another beautiful place, but probably not what she had pictured.
So you grew up a PK?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And brothers and sisters, or were you?
So one older sister, so they, my dad took a church when we were I was in third grade. My sister was in fifth grade in St. Louis, and ended up there in a nice little town. And so that's really where we grew up for the most part with our dad as a pastor.
Did mom work in the home, or was she also had an outside job? Or
she taught for 20 years on and off while we were kids, but she managed to get enough years to accrue the pension.
Right.
And so she was a public school teacher in the same district where we grew up.
And I'm sure that helped supplement a pastor's salary, right?
Exactly.
One of the things maybe she was planning on with regards to the engineering degree versus the alternative. Well, full disclosure to our audience, both Jeff and I are believers. We connected through a group called C12. Some of you may know about that, particularly those that are C12 members listening today. C12 is a wonderful organization, a peer advisory group of Christian business owners across the world now, right? I think we're close to 3,000 members or so, 100 or so chapters. And Jeff and I have not met personally face to face, but I love how you've intertwined already, your faith and obviously the fact that you grew up in a home. When did you come to Christ, and what role did he play in your upbringing along with mom and dad?
Yeah, I really came to Christ on my own, right? Raised in the church.
That doesn't always mean you could be brought up that way, right? Yeah.
No, that's right. I remember watching a Major League Baseball player give his testimony one time, and he said, growing up, he said, I had a drug problem, every Sunday, my mom would drag me to church, and and so that's sort of how it was. It wasn't a choice until, really, and this is a common thing for kids that grow up in the church. There's usually a confirmation class somewhere
Sure.
along the way, and it was
Sure.
just, hey, you're in eighth grade, let's do that, right? It was just the thing you were doing. But I remember standing up there, Brant, in front of the congregation, and they asked me, without my parents there, do you believe in Jesus?
Yeah.
And I just remember, oh, they're actually asking me. Like,
Right.
this is not an assumption, right? I have
Yeah.
to say it out loud.
That's right.
So I
That's
remember
right.
doing that and thinking to
Yeah.
myself, just at that moment, like, do I actually believe this? And I thought, yeah, I actually do believe this.
Awesome.
So that's sort
Awesome.
of when I felt like I accepted it. But,
Were you a
faith is
teenager
a
at that
journey.
time? How old were you?
Yeah, 13 years old.
13, yeah,
years old.
yeah,
I'll never
yeah.
forget it. Yeah.
That's awesome. And other people that inspired you during your childhood, were there coaches, mentors, Sunday school teachers? If you think back at some of the folks that had an impact and an imprint on you beyond mom and dad.
No, it's an interesting question. I've had a lot of mentors later in my life
Yeah.
that've had a very big impact on me. Maybe we'll get to some of that. But
Sure.
early in my life, I've gone to some of these men's groups or small groups and that kind of thing, and a lot of people try to unpack maybe wounds that you've had from your
Sure.
parents.
Right.
And I
right.
remember going to one of those things about 20 years ago. I'm in my early 50s and now, so probably in my early 30s. And I was listening to all these people kind of talk about the wounds they've had and other mentors they had to find. And I remember kind of for the first time really going, wow. You
That
only
wasn't
have
my
your own
life.
experience. That wasn't my experience. I kind of hit the lottery
You're
on
blessed.
parents,
Yeah. Right.
to be
That's
honest
awesome.
with you. And so I got lots of other problems, but that wasn't one of them, Brant.
Well, that's cool. What about school? Were you a good student, Jeff?
Yeah, I felt like I didn't have a choice.
With a school teacher mom, my dad was a school teacher, then a principal. So yeah, good grades were
Right.
expected, right?
I probably would have been sleeping on the street. I don't know what they would have done, but with a dad that ended up with I guess he ended up with a D-min, right? So he had
Sure.
all kinds of degrees. My mom also had a master's degree in teaching and that sort of thing.
Got it.
There just wasn't any. I
There
just
wasn't
never
any
even knew it was
option.
an option
Yeah,
not to
yeah.
be a good student.
Right.
So,
What about outside
not-
activities? You'd mentioned baseball or an interest in that. Did you play sports, play ball?
Oh yeah,
What were your things?
played,
Music?
Yeah, played everything growing up
Yeah.
and music. My parents said you got to take 6 years of some kind of music, and so I
Right.
really have no talent. But it was kind of nice to be able to read music and do those kind of things and play a little piano. But for the most part, it was I just loved sports. I always loved sports, every kind. Of course, these were the days when every day you just go out and play.
That's right.
Not
Leave
all
at
of
8
them
o'clock
were
in the morning and
organized.
come home for dinner, right? Yeah.
I'd ride my bike primarily to. I
Yeah.
played a lot of soccer. I played in growing up, and then I played. That's a big sport in St. Louis still.
Sure.
And but I also played tennis. I'd ride my bike to
Oh.
the tennis courts,
Got
and
it.
ended up working there during high school and that sort of thing. And so I just really kind of latched onto that. My parents played, and so I just would always, since I could walk, I did that. So I ended up playing at Trinity.
I was going to say, you went on to Trinity
yeah, a
University.
little
So what did you play? What sports did you play in college?
So I played tennis, but
Okay.
really Division III. I always joke I like Division III athletes because they
don't take life too seriously.
Yeah. It's
Or their
you're
sports
not
life
worried
too
about your
seriously.
scholarship. There isn't one. Okay.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
So you kind of do it for the love of the sport. And so
were
that's
you
what I
were
did
you a
that way.
walk on or were you recruited? What was the?
No, this is back in the days. They
Yeah.
didn't. I mean, I remember
You joined the team.
football
Yeah.
the football coach caught me after tennis practice one day and said, "Hey, we need a wide receiver. Are you interested in playing any football?" I was like, I mean, these days, can you imagine even
Oh, my
D3?
goodness.
It's like
Yeah.
a whole
Oh,
recruiting
no,
deal,
no.
right?
It's
They're
a-
just
it's a
plucking
totally
players
different
from
deal.
wherever they could get them.
Crazy. Well, listen, you ended up an entrepreneur, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But let's talk about your early years. Were there entrepreneurial tendencies growing up? Did you have the paper route, mow the lawns? What were the kinds of things that you did to earn some extra pocket money, if anything?
It's kind of unbelievable, Brand. I've been listening to some of your podcasts, and it seems like everybody had a paper route or mowed a lawn. And it's
That wasn't
funny,
your deal.
I don't actually think of myself. I guess I am an entrepreneur, but I'm a little bit of a reluctant entrepreneur. And
Okay.
again, we'll probably get to that here in a minute. But I did do a lot of that stuff. So growing up in St. Louis, I mean, I mowed everybody's yard on the whole street. I was kind of mad at them if they wouldn't let me.
Yeah, of course.
Including we were on a boulevard, including like the median. That was about a third of a mile long and about.
You sent a bill to 30, the city.
Yeah, like the homeowners association paid me. I had scratches all over my body from the trees, hanging down.
I love
it. But I love that, And I think back now, I'm like, I totally used my parents' car, my parents' mower. I mean, I just wore out all their equipment. So they were kind of generous to let me use it.
Where'd the spending money go? Did you have some vices and some hobbies that you indulged in when you were in school?
I liked radios, so anything music related. But honestly, my sister and I still joke about this. I was the bank, I was the saver.
You're the saver, huh? Good.
Yeah, and she
had
was
that first savings account where they printed it out in the little cards, right? The little booklets. Remember those?
I had an Apple IIe when they came out. If you can remember, like those. Well, not me, my family did, right? And so I was learning BASIC in school, and so I would like program the little basic computer thing to add it all up. So yeah, I had a little obsession with the savings early on.
I love it.
That might have something to do with this.
What about other jobs? Did you have jobs in the high school and college that were working for the hourly wage and in your first W-2s, or did that come later in life?
Oh man, I've had every job. I think I got fired. I think my real first job was McDonald's, and I think I leaned on the counter about 3 in the afternoon, and I got fired. I probably was 15, and I think I got fired by a 16-year-old for leaning on the counter after I mopped the floor. But then I was like, who's this FICA guy taking money out of my account?
Right. And then, who's he? Right. Yeah. Where's that going?
So I worked at the tennis courts. I did some admin for a guy in the church that did some wholesaling of all kinds of parts and this sort of thing. And I worked in college. I did work at a sunroof factory, putting together sunroofs. Any kind of job I could get to kind of get a little spending money. It was, I tried them all.
Now, I'm sure along with getting good grades, it was assumed you'd go to college for both you and your sister. You chose Trinity, great school. What were the kind of decision factors around that? Did mom or dad go there, or was that a school that you kind of picked out of the massive opportunities you had back then?
Yeah, well, I don't know about massive, but my parents were very generous about this. One of the things we do in our business now in wealth management is talk to families about legacy, and I didn't think about it that way then. But one of my family's values, obviously, Christianity was valued with my dad. Couldn't been against his entire career to it, but also education was a big deal, right? I mentioned my parents, had a lot of education and were educators and that sort of thing, and so. For me, they said, we will help you as best we can financially to go to any college, you pick it. And so public, private, anywhere you want to go in the country, we're not limiting by location or anything. And so that was a real gift, and I don't think I fully appreciated it at the time. But I remember thinking, okay, I want to go to a liberal arts school. But get a technical degree. That was my 18-year-old brain thinking. And then when I got off the plane in San Antonio, and I was literally in a parka, and I'd been playing tennis in a bubble all winter. In December in San Antonio, and it was about 72 degrees and sunny with all outdoor courts. I thought this might be the place for me. But
I didn't have to go to too many places to make that decision.
No, it was. We visited a few, but that was. I thought, what am I doing up here? Freezing.
Now you didn't pursue a technical degree. You ended up getting a business degree. Did you kind of start in the engineering area, or how did you land up with that?
I did. I thought, that's what we'll do. I wanted to use kind of both sides of the brain. I really like writing and that sort of thing, but I also really was good at math and that sort of thing. So I thought, well, my dad did engineering. It seems to open a lot of doors, so I'll start there. And I started there, but really I just figured out, not to knock Trinity's engineering program, but it really is ranked as a great liberal arts school for a reason. And so I just look at the resources my daughter has in engineering at Northwestern, and it's kind of night and day, frankly, for schools that are known for it. It's just a different game. And so I thought they really, anyway, I could tell lots of stories, but suffice it to say, I kept with the math, but went to accounting pretty quickly.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And of course, you joined Arthur Andersen, one of the, I guess it was Big Four back then, right? Or
It
were they already
was.
split up? And, you only worked for three other companies before founding, and three great
Sure.
ones at that: Arthur Andersen, Payne Weber, and Morgan Stanley.
Yeah.
What made you choose Arthur Andersen as your first job coming out of college?
This is a lesson. Talk about a recruiting idea. You should tell your employers to try this. I'm looking forward to doing this one day. But Arthur Anderson gave the three top accounting majors at Trinity scholarships,
Oh,
and indiscriminately, whoever the top three are.
that's it.
And it was a whopping $1,500, I believe.
Hey, that's right.
And
it's a lot of money back then.
But it was something, right?
Exactly.
Nobody else gave us anything.
That's right. It's
And
better than zero.
So when we got out, guess what? We all three went there.
Very good.
To work, and so that was good, and they had a great reputation.
Oh,
and,
great place to get trained. So you did a couple of years in audit, and then went on to Payne Weber, and you had a storied career there. Obviously, ending up as a senior VP. What was kind of the impetus around moving over to that side of the financial services?
That was for you income statement, balance sheet, financial statement people out there. Let's just say we've moved from the expense side of the ledger to the revenue side of the ledger. So as an internal auditor, right, traveling the western half of the U.S., doing internal audits for, about Payne Weber probably had 300 offices at that time back in the early 90s. And so I probably went to 150 of them in the western half of the U.S. And so, but I realized that was a great job, but their goal in life is to keep my salary as low as humanly possible. And so I said, wow, all these advisors that I'm doing audits, they seem to be
they're driving a nice car.
Yeah, they're making a lot more money and having a lot more fun with a way more flexible schedule than I am. I think I'm on the wrong side of this trade. So that's when we made the switch.
When was the first time you started managing people? Was it at Payne Weber, or did you actually have some management responsibility at Arthur Andersen?
That's an interesting question. I think it really was at Payne Weber, because what happened was, and it's still a little this way, that people might think that they do it all the same at these big firms. It's really not true. You're really a silo, and then as you grow, if you
make the cut,
if you make the cut first, and then if you grow, you start having a little team. And so most people, if you're on the advisor side, if you're not in management, you're really only managing. I had maybe 5 people on my team, that sort of thing. And so you do learn some management skills, but starting a company and managing a lot more people, it's really a different skill set.
Of course. Any early leadership lessons you remember, though, from those Payne Weber days, and maybe painful ones that you might have gone through in those first few years of managing others?
I just think I've learned so much more in the last 10 or 15 years. The early management lessons, I think, we were constantly sharing resources.
Right.
And so a lot of the people didn't work full time for you, or you might share them. And I think, I still believe this, but the way you treat people and just servant leadership, the nicer you are to the people below you, the harder they're going to work for you. And you don't do it in a manipulative way, but it makes the workplace a whole lot more pleasant.
Sure does.
They want to come to work, doing the work with you. And then, we had, your clients tend to kind of reflect you, so they would be pleasant to them. So I think we got kind of an outsized amount of help from folks that we partially manage, just because I think we tried at least to treat them a little better.
What's the best as well as the worst lesson that you might have learned from previous bosses? Now, you don't need to mention any names. We don't need to go back there. But looking at perhaps the Arthur Andersen and Payne Weber days before you moved on to Morgan Stanley, what sticks out on both sides of that ledger?
The word that comes to mind on the positive side is humility.
Yeah.
And kind of this servant leadership. We were talking about our faith earlier, and the ultimate example is Christ, right? He comes and he's got all the resources at his fingertips, and he chooses to serve. There's a model there. I know indeed. I can't achieve that completely, but we're kind of called to try. And so the great managers I've seen and had, were really all about helping you achieve
Yeah.
your God-given potential.
Right.
And the
Right.
other ones are just starkly on the other side. Uh,
About as negative as you can go the opposite
well,
direction. Yeah.
it's just
Well,
I
it's
had
kind of
a
their own personal self-interest, right? Is that what you
correct.
found?
I
Yeah.
had a guy say, I'll never forget. I was in a manager's office, and the phone rings while I'm having a chat with him, and he answers the phone, and he's getting some request to solve some issue, and he hangs up, and he goes, well, we'll solve that as long as it doesn't take any money out of my pocket, And anyway,
Yeah.
back to our
Oh,
discussion.
man.
Literally,
And
just
you remember
deadpan.
those things, don't you?
It's
It leaves
stark.
such an
I'll
indelible
never forget it.
impression.
I'll
Yeah.
never forget it. And I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
man, hey, at least I like the clarity. At least you're honest. Like I know what motivates you. So,
Yeah.
but that's that's not how I'd like to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Now you took your team, as I think is the case, from Payne Weber over to Morgan Stanley. Now that happens often,
It
right,
does.
in the financial services world. Well, was that a big disruption? Was that frowned upon at the time when you did that, or was
Nah,
that a fairly easy
it's
move?
pretty
Yeah.
commonplace. In
Yeah.
fact,
Yeah.
the fact that I've only worked in 3 places is strange for the industry. Most people kind of cut
Move around a lot
contracts
more.
and
Yeah.
move around, and they're doing longer and longer deals these days. So I think there's a little less of that going on.
Right.
But
Right.
at the time, Payne Weber was undersized. This is before UBS bought them.
That's right. Yeah. Pre 2000, right?
That's
Yeah.
right. And
Yep.
so Morgan Stanley was spending a lot more on research and that kind of thing. And so we liked just kind of having
Yeah.
more things
Yeah.
at our fingertips.
Well, tell us a little bit about how, your walk with Christ maybe evolved over that period of time, because, you went from growing obviously single, independent provider as an auditor. You moved into management responsibilities, Payne Weber. And I can imagine your team was fair size by the time you went to Morgan Stanley. How many folks did you bring over with you?
Yeah, we brought 5, but I mean
Yeah.
we're at 14 now, and
Right.
hopefully going to continue to grow. We're about 3.5 years in, but really in my that is kind of the right timing. Really, as we got over to Morgan Stanley, and they paid us a lot of money to go over there, and I'd already made growing up in a modest household, well-educated folks, but just didn't choose careers that were big money makers,
Right.
to put it mildly. Uh, I always thought that my dad had basically a CEO type job managing a very
Sure.
large church, but he
Yeah.
had janitor pay, and that didn't really appeal to me, and I really didn't just feel called to work in the church, and so
Right.
I really had a wrong mindset, and that
Hmm.
mindset was okay, as a believer, if you don't work for a nonprofit, you're really not in full-time ministry. So I
Hmm.
had this idea that I guess the rest of us are supposed to be good people, treat people well,
Right.
go to church and support the heavy lifters,
Yeah.
like my
Yeah.
dad that are actually doing it.
Interesting.
But I
Yeah.
didn't really think of myself as being in
As a
ministry.
missionary. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Right.
and I
Right.
think, okay, well, now what's going to fill that void? If I really didn't have that as the ultimate goal, and I would not have told you this in my early 30s, but I think what was revealed to me later through doing some Bible study and that sort of thing through some other mentors was that I was putting money before God,
Hmm.
and so I was obsessing just like I had when I was 13 and 14 years old about my savings account, and
Right. Right.
not I was thinking like an owner, not like a steward.
Hmm.
God
Yeah.
owns it all, and it really frees you up. And so I was just kind of feeling empty. I had a big bank
Hmm.
account relative to what I ever thought I would have, and I thought that should make me happy. The family was good, so from the outside everything looks good, but I'm kind of feeling empty. And so I started
Yeah.
doing a bunch of Bible study, and God's word just revealed to me, man, hey buddy, I
There's a
own
different
it.
way here. Yeah. I own
You
it.
got to
Yeah.
get this priority stat.
Yeah.
It's okay, money, nothing wrong with money. It's just a tool, but you can't have it number one. And so as I started to learn that and put those principles into practice, man, my life got a lot better.
Hmm. Now, was this pre Archetype Wealth Partners?
It
Was this while
is.
you're at Morgan
It
Stanley?
is.
Right. Right.
This is probably early
The
2000s. So,
2000s. Yeah.
I'm in the first 8 or 10 years of the career, and so I had some pretty quick success,
Right.
and it brought that financial success, but it didn't really bring
Fill you.
peace
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you're
Awesome.
always trying to fill that God-sized hole in your
That's
heart
right. Yep. I've
with
heard that
something,
before. Yeah,
right? And
absolutely.
so I was
I've
trying
heard
to
that
stuff it with
before.
money, but I couldn't get enough to fill it. So that really turned into just a change of heart for me. And so
Yeah.
I started feeling, I talked to my wife. She's always been way ahead of me on all of this, by the way. I'm just catching up to her.
Right.
Sometimes I'm afraid it sounds like I dragged her along. It's actually, she just put up with me catching up with her. And,
I've heard that story before, Jeff. I think it's very common.
yes. And,
Well, so tell us, so you brought your team from Morgan Stanley,
yeah,
and gosh, you were there 17 years. I mean, one
yes,
would have thought your career would have probably ended there. What
right.
was kind of the motivating, event that led to
So,
you to move out? Yeah.
yes, it's such a great question. In 2010, I'll never forget, I had found, my heart had been changed. Started becoming a lot more generous. God started bringing us clients,
Mm,
business owners who wanted to be generous. So we started doing all kinds of philanthropic planning and this sort
mm,
of thing. I really wanted to implement biblical wisdom into the way we gave advice, but not be preachy about it, but
right,
but
right.
unapologetic. So I didn't want to put the cross at the front door. We're at Morgan Stanley anyway, where you really couldn't do that. And through that process, I met a mentor of mine called Ron Blue. He's
Yeah.
written like 18 books
Mm,
on how to implement biblical wisdom into financial advice. He became a mentor of mine. I became a coach for the Kingdom Advisor Coaching Program, an organization he founded that's a nonprofit that helps financial advisors implement biblical wisdom into their practice.
yeah.
And so he asked me to be a coach, and I said, Ron, would you mentor me before we go coach these other people? And
Right.
so I would fly into Atlanta once a quarter. We would meet in the morning, and then we'd coach these other folks like noon to noon for a day. And it's sort of toward the end of our time together, and that he said, Jeff, he had started a little firm. He goes, I can't believe this firm has grown the way it has, and this sort of thing. And it was like, it's a moment that I pray every one of your listeners
Mm,
has,
mm,
which is total clarity,
mm,
a total clarity on what they're supposed to do with their lives. And
yeah.
and by this time, I had sort of figured out there's no line. We're all in ministry, and there's no line between the
Right, right,
sacred and the secular.
right,
You
right.
don't just go to check your faith Monday through Friday or whatever. And so what God told me, and it wasn't audible, but I heard it loud and clear.
Mm,
It was, I want you to scale what this guy started.
wow.
And I thought, well, I had two responses. The first response was, okay, God, that sounds like fun because I have all these opinions, okay, about how things should be run. And I was on all these committees at Morgan Stanley and no one listened to me. Uh, and then the second thought right behind it was, you got the wrong guy.
Yeah,
Because
I've got a lot of guys that could lead into doing this, right?
yeah, I'm like,
Not me.
I got 5 people. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
right,
far from scaled.
right,
Okay, so
right,
I
right.
said, I've never scaled anything. I don't know how to do it. And I remember God, when I feel like I'm really hearing from Him, often it feels like a
Hmm.
sweet grandfather who's chuckling at you. You know what I mean?
Right, right, exactly.
But wants the best for you. And I remember Him saying, that's why, kind of chuckling and going, that's why I picked you. I know you
Yeah.
can't do it. Wake up tomorrow and I'll
I'll
do
show
it.
you
And
how.
just
Yeah.
give me credit. And
Oh, I
so
love that.
for the
I
last
love
10
that.
years, it took me about 6 years to get the company
Yeah.
started. I had started a Christian focus group at Morgan Stanley. I had thrown myself into that, grew it to about 500 members. And then finally, we were just bumping into issues about, our ability to communicate biblical
Yeah.
wisdom. And so I felt led to really start a
It's
company
awesome.
with a vision and mission that was right from the start.
Now you're about 3 years in, and you said about 15, 16
Yeah,
employees now?
14 employees
14
now.
employees.
It's
And you
been
serving
fun.
just the Houston area, or do you have clients
No,
nationally,
no. Yeah, we've
internationally?
got one employee in North Carolina.
No.
We have a New Jersey, New York office. We have an Atlanta office, and we have a San Antonio office. And so
Wow.
the vision is really to just put together a group of people who, our vision is to build the ideal God honoring wealth management company.
Yeah.
The mission is
Yeah.
to connect people's money with their purpose and help families thrive across generations. So there
Hmm.
is a subsegment of advisors out there that wants to do things in this
Right.
way. And there's really not a scaled company that's a fiduciary company that is really serving those people
Hmm.
that way. So we
Fantastic.
call it the Chick-fil-A of wealth management,
Yeah.
sort of,
Yeah.
scaled, with operators. We all do it the same way,
Right.
But through our
Are
own
you all
God-given
are you all
lens.
believers, and are you only attracting believers as clients?
We
Or
really are. And the way we
differentiate?
look at it is very much like Chick-fil-A. You know, they will tell you they're not a Christian company. I think we're a little more of a Christian company only because our advice is our product. Their
Right.
product is a
Right.
chicken sandwich.
Yeah.
You don't, but our advice has principles behind it, and those principles are biblical. Now we don't.
Right.
We'll put verses with them when appropriate, but we're not hanging the cross in the front door because God said scale it, and we want to be winsome about it. And some people, even believers, have a problem, you know, with the painter that showed up with the fish on the back of the van and
That's
then
right.
didn't finish the job.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's right.
So we want to lead with excellence. You know, we want to lead with excellence and win the job because we do an excellent job for clients. And oh, by the way, here are the principles we operate on. Here's why this is working so well for you.
That's awesome.
So we just want
That's
to earn
awesome.
the right to be heard by our excellence.
How would you say your leadership styles evolved over time, Jeff? Particularly now that you're working in an environment and culture that you have a lot more control and direction for.
I have had the benefit of so many amazing mentors, guys that have scaled, men that have scaled companies. I don't know why I have access to these people. I'm just glad I do.
Yeah.
And I try to pass it on. Hopefully, this is an opportunity to do a little bit of that.
Absolutely.
But I think I've learned so many lessons. I would say two key ones. Number one, hire amazing people and set them loose. Okay,
Yeah.
it almost sounds trite, but I was describing this. I'm on a nonprofit board, and there's a new guy managing it, and he was asking some management lessons. And I said, number one, which is kind of back to the servant leadership and humility thing.
Right.
There's two things I think of. Good to Great is an old business book. You know, many of your listeners may have. Yeah, it's a classic, Jim Collins. But, you know, they did a study of all these companies that did really well for over decades. And the one thing the leaders had in common was not taking credit.
That's right. Yeah.
Empowering the next set of leaders below them who would model empowering the next set of leaders below them. So I have everybody at our company is better at something that they do well. They're way better than I am. So, I mean, there's not even really temptation for me to stick my neck into too much stuff, or my nose into too much stuff. I mean,
you've got good
they're
stewards.
great at it. Yeah. And so all I want to do is hire the best people and empower them to use their God-given skills to the maximum. And I would say the other thing is, one of my mentors taught me this. Of course, right? I told you I'm the old computer like savings guy, right? So I'm obsessed with numbers, right? And growth rates and all of this. And he told me, I never forget, he said, "Oh, I don't do any financial projections." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Your company's worth billions of dollars." And he said, No, I hire the best people, and I don't want them to do a deal at year end to just try to make a bonus. I'm hiring them for 30 years to make good decisions over a long period of time. Yeah. So we focus on activities, not results. So we have goals, but focusing, so hiring the best people and then thinking about, you know, what are the activities they should do? I'm only interested in seeing the reports of the activities they're doing, not the fruit. I know the fruit will come if you have the right person doing the right activities.
Yeah, makes good sense. Jeff, what do you look for to that point when you're making bets on the people you invest in and hire?
Maybe you can help me with that. So far, it has been, doesn't everybody want to have the perfect personality test for every job description and they'll never make another mistake? You know, I mean, sign me up if you find it. And we were talking about our C12 groups. I'll never forget, we had one of our guys in our group was very excited about his new personality profile that he was doing for salespeople. And another guy in the group says, you know, he gave this big speech about how great it was. And then one of the other guys who's been around forever, he said, "Yeah, we use exactly that, and it barely works."
Yeah, talking about taking the air out of the balloon.
It was like, you know. And so we do use some personality, profiles and that sort of thing. But honestly, we're small enough so far. We've been fortunate that everybody has come kind of via word of mouth.
Right.
You know, hey, I know this person. We should talk to them. And I'm kind of part of that.
I think he'll work well here.
Yeah. And so honestly, I don't feel like I'm a great interviewer. All I do is get people excited. Like you could tell the excitement in my voice. Right. I start getting more excited as I talk about the business. I absolutely love what we're doing, the impact we're having. I love the team. I just love getting up and going to work. in the morning. I didn't always feel that way when I was unaligned in a place that was unaligned with my calling, and I felt limited. And so, once you can find that place, that's what I'm really looking for, is people that are just so excited to come work in that environment and excited about the culture. I let Kale, our COO, ask the hard questions. I just get them all excited.
Well, I'm going to press you on this one, though. So, if you only had about 5 minutes with someone, and this isn't a direct report, this is a frontline advisor that you're bringing in, what would you ask them? What would you talk about? What would you try to see in them that would tell you, I think she's got the right stuff for us?
Yeah, I think we talk about being humble and coachable and all of those things. But for me, one thing I really like is if any of your listeners have read the book David and Goliath,
from Malcolm Gladwell. Yeah, it was one of my favorites.
And I was kind of joking with you before that I love D3 athletes, and I kind of do. Okay, not just because I am one. Okay, so my daughter's a D1 athlete. I'm going to tease her this weekend when I see her about being a prima donna. Okay, but she's
real
not,
slackers. Those.
Yeah. She all she did was outwork what I did. But anyway,
exactly.
But sort of Malcolm Gladwell, in that book, he really talks about high achievers often overcome some adversity.
That's right. Do things very differently.
And so I think that's one of my favorite questions is
I love
talk about some adversity that you've had and how did you overcome it or not? Or what did you learn from it? Or maybe you failed that time and maybe you had another one, or maybe you're still working on it. But I just think it's so character building. We all have problems. Every one of us. And so nobody really wants to hear all the positive stuff. Tell me a challenge.
Bringing a slingshot to a sword fight can have an advantage. No?
Exactly. Well said. Well said.
There's a lot of speculation, Jeff, just to take a little bit more of a macro view about, what the world looks like in a post-COVID world, whether or not we'll even have a post-COVID world. We're going into a period now. We're recording this in almost late October. We're getting spikes again all across the country, as was expected as we get into the flu season, and et cetera. But, speaking about your industry and then maybe specifically about your company, what changes do you see ahead in financial wealth management? Is this going to impact a lot of things that people decide? We've had the stock market down about 1,000 points in the last couple of days because of, the post-COVID worries or the spiking worries. And, do you see a lot of volatility ahead? Do you see things that, are going to be structurally changed when it comes to investments? Or, this is a passing storm. We just need to be a buffalo and run through it. To use the C12 analogy.
That's right. Well, I would say that it's there are permanent changes that are going to be made. I think when this thing first started, I was just probably like a lot of folks, I was just kind of hoping it'd blow over as quickly as possible. Maybe the summer heat will come and this thing will disappear, right?
Right.
And we all learned to use Zoom a little more. Okay, that's good.
Right.
But I think there's changes coming that are going to be permanent. And this idea, I like the phrase "a hybrid world" is coming. Okay. I'm sitting here in my little office that I built in our little garage apartment because I was working 2 jobs when I launched the company. Right.
Right.
And it's come in very useful.
During it's your COVID. Studio now. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I'm not sure. It has broken my Puritan 8 to 5. You're not working unless you're sitting in the office work ethic, which if you're on Amazon shopping, are you really working anyway?
That's true.
All those hours.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
I think that addiction has gotten broken for me, and I think for a lot of people. And our focus at the business is on business owners selling their companies, 10 million plus, who want to be generous.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so we've got this philanthropic planning thing that we do well. Kind of dialing down the taxes and up the giving. But we love dealing with families around legacy. Obviously, we like to do investments, and that's how we get paid, is on assets under management.
Sure.
But you know what this has done? We used to do these local events, and now we do national events.
There you go.
So now we can have business owners. I think we will end up with offices everywhere, but they might be smaller.
Right. Sure. And people working from their second apartment.
Exactly. So you really don't. It's really broken this. absolute need to have physical space
Yeah.
for everybody
Yeah.
40 hours a week. And so I think that trend is for real.
Right.
So I'm glad we're not invested in too
Commercial
much.
real estate.
Yeah, commercial real estate. And you can see it, in the home sales numbers, or even though there's a little bit of a weak number this morning, overall, it's been amazing. So
Right.
people are spending money on their home offices and they're seeing all the things that are wrong. If they're going to spend that much time there, they're fixing that up.
That's right. That's
So
right.
I think these trends are for real. I don't think they're temporary. I think they're permanent. But I'll tell you something, with all, and especially with the election coming up next Tuesday and all that, and maybe by the time this goes, we'll know who the winner is by the time it's published. But I say, with all the angst that's going on in our country, I just look at the immigration numbers. The number of people that want to come to America still outstrips any.
Isn't going down. Yeah.
It's not going down.
Yeah.
And so for what we see as the inside baseball that's sometimes hard to watch for democracy, there's a reason the U.S. market is outperforming. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There are other parts of the world that are catching up with technology and so forth, but I am bullish on America. I mean, we have our 3 dials, investment philosophy, and we really look at the data very carefully to make investment decisions. But just from a macro view, we will get through this as a country, and it'll only make us stronger. And we still have the most innovation in this country. Betting against America is never a good idea for the long haul. So,
that and the Dodgers.
There you go. There you go.
Jeff, you've been super generous with your time. We always have one last question we ask, sure, and all our CEO guests. And what career and life advice would you give to someone that maybe has their eyes on a corner office for the large corporate employer that you and I have had in the past, or perhaps want to be an entrepreneur like yourself and start their own business someday?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and it's great to have something like that for a takeaway. And I wrote down actually a little diagram here. I teach some classes on finding your God-given calling.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a Venn diagram, right? The 3 circles that sort of intersect in the middle.
Sure.
And if you think about, and I think focusing less on, I want this CEO job, and kind of like we were talking about, more on understanding yourself, your talents, and then maximizing those, putting yourself in situations to maximize those, you are going to be promoted. It's just going to happen because you're going to do excellent work if you're doing things that you love to do.
That's right.
That are inspired. Okay. Yeah. And so the Venn diagram I always think about for calling is, the intersection of talent, passion, and a God-honoring activity. So for me, I love talking to high capacity men about their calling. I love to tease it out, help them tease it out, and then give them oxygen to live it out. And so my number one delivery system, so if you draw an arrow from that calling to business, well, guess what? I'm in a business where I love managing other people who love doing that, right? Working with high capacity families. So I can do that half the day. And then sometimes I can meet with these families still. So my job description kind of feeds my calling, right? I have the capacity to do that. I'm in a culture that encourages me to do that the way. And then we have an ownership structure that incents me to do it that way. So I would just tell people, figure out what you're great at. What is your God-given calling? And you actually can live that out in the workplace. How do you do that? And when you find that sweet spot where what you do during the week gives you the margin to, even if you're working in a factory, right? If you're doing it with such excellence, whatever that job is, you're going to get promoted. Right. And so I think focusing on your excellence rather than, the job title is the way to go. And finding that passion, right? Exactly. Along with it. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, Jeff Thomas, founder and CEO of Archetype Wealth Partners, thank you so very much for sharing your journey into the corner office. Hey, thanks so much for having me, Brant.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.